County, Uinta County, and Daggett County. So that's it's a unique area, but it's
Big base.
yeah, but that's me.
Oh, sure.
I'm Randy Booth, and I represent District 13, which includes Nebo School District and Provo City School District. I'm grateful to be here.
Thank you. Eva Bogus. I'm Christina Bogus. I represent Taylorsville, West Jordan, and Kearns. It's the simplest way to describe it. Thank you. And I believe we have Chair Hymas online with us today.
Yes, thank you, Matt Hymas. I represent District 10. That is Tooele County, the west side of Salt Lake County, and the west side of Utah County. And I apologize for being on the road, but I've got to take care of some family here. So thank you for your patience.
Family first always, and we appreciate you for joining us for as much as you can today.
You get to take off today.
Let's go ahead and start with our staff introductions. And we have, and I hope I'm saying this right, is it Alicia?
It is Alicia.
It's okay, it's spelled a little differently.
My
and then
mom made it hard for me my entire life.
And then we have
stand
Dean.
up.
Okay.
My name is Alicia Roseman. I'm the Assistant Director in Purchasing. I've been here since April 2022, and in September 2024, I promoted to Assistant Director. A fun fact about me is I am a sucker for sweets, and I'm a kid at heart, and me and my little girl, we try to make it to the happiest place on earth every year. So that's something
Sweet.
fun that we get to do.
So Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Competition there.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for all you do for our agency and for the students of Utah.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. And Dean.
Morning, I'm Dean Dykstra, school construction specialist. And my wife and I moved here approximately 6 years from Iowa. I've been here 3.5 years. Started on Halloween. I don't know that there's a fun fact about me. We came here for lifestyle. Me to ski and bike, and my wife is an ultra trail marathoner.
Well, I think the fact that you started here on Halloween is the fun fact about you, and I hope you've had more treats than tricks here. But Dean, I've heard your name about 100 times, and so I love doing this at the beginning of these committee meetings because it's nice to put a face with a name. And thank you both for introducing yourselves.
I mean, I gotta know if you're related to Lenny Dykstra.
I get that question a lot. Lenny has quite a few problems.
But he was a great baseball player.
His personal life, a little bit shambles.
Yeah, for sure.
So is that a yes or a no?
No.
Okay, all right.
All right, well, thanks again, appreciate it. We do not have any requests for public comment today, so we're gonna move in. Just to let folks know, we have a little bit of a lighter session in February and March because we finished all of the things that we need to do from last year's legislative session. Now, next month, we'll start up with a heavier agenda again, and it will take us 10 months to get through everything from this last month's legislative session. And then next February and March, you'll have a little lighter load again. So we have a couple of agenda items that aren't terribly intensive, but then we will do a deep dive into taxes and particularly property taxes and any of the changes in the session this past month that change property taxes, which will help inform us if we want to stay the course with the working groups that we have discussed, or if enough was done there that we want to change our course. So let's go ahead and start with 2.2. And we have 601, Ben Rasmussen. Yeah, R277601.
Ben Rasmussen, Director of Law and Professional Practices. This rule is just up for its 5-year review today. It's actually a couple months ahead of schedule, but we figured since the schedule was light, now was a good time to get it on the The calendar, this is the rule on school buses, incorporates the school bus manual and has a few other safety regulations for operation of school buses. No proposed changes, just are asking you for a motion to continue it so it can stay in effect for another 5 years.
Great. Any questions from any committee members?
No, it's short, sweet, and well done.
It's short, sweet, and well done. And this might be a good time for me to just give you an update, and maybe to the full board as well, but our full board had made a motion to request that our busing experts and specialists work with the legislature to see what hazardous routes would look like to add those potentially to the reimbursable amounts for busing. The estimate that came back on that is if you just added the streets that were 50 miles an hour and over, it would be about $10.5 million ongoing per year. So there are a couple ways to look at that. You can look at it as that's way too much to add for an ongoing additional amount because we know we've been trying to reduce the ongoing amounts, but you can also look at it as if the local districts do feel like they need to do that for safety reasons, then the money does have to come from somewhere, and it's probably more of a property tax issue or a general fund issue, instructional dollars. So there's an update there, and I'm seeking a motion.
I move that the committee continues our 277-601 standards for school buses and operations and forward to the board for approval.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor that the committee continues R 277-601 standards for school buses and operations and forward to the board for approval. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair Hymas?
Yeah, I'm an aye. Sorry, I'm late.
That's fine. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
You should have made a joke.
About you being late. Item 2.3, we have an update to the LEA annual assurance census document, and we have our grants compliance officer, Sarah Harward. We're keeping you busy between yesterday and today.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. All right, so we went over this a little bit last month, but just for the sake of public, this is our annual update to our LEA assurance document with our state and federal assurances for the upcoming school year. We have to get this to our LEAs no later than June 1st so that they have at least 30 days to review and authorize and certify to these assurances no later than July 1st. So we are here to present these to you. Now, last month I said there wasn't too much to update on, but since then we have two updates. So later that day after our committee meeting, the Department of Education released an update to the constitutionally protected prayer. And this is number 39 on our assurances under the ESSA. So it was a really minor update to constitutionally protected prayer. Section 8524 of the ESEA Act added religious expression in addition to prayer being constitutionally protected. So just a minor update where the LEA should establish and implement, or the LEA does not have any policy that prevents or otherwise denies a student or teacher participation in constitutionally protected prayer. So yeah, the federal guidance just added religious expression. So slight update to that one. And then we did as a result of legislative session, have to add one new state assurance. And this is number 19, CPR training health education. So this is a new assurance we had to add. It's not new to the LEAs. What happened in session is we no longer have funding for CPR training. They took away our funding, but the requirement remains. So typically we've gathered this assurance in the application for the funding to our LEAs. So because there's no longer funding, we will no longer be sending out an application to our LEAs. So now it ends up on this document because it is still a requirement. So this one is the LEA certifies that they have hands-on CPR training as part of their health education core standards, or it's offered online for an online-only school. So this is something they've already been certifying to. We're just moving it to this document because we are no longer receiving funding for them.
Ask a question.
Yes. Member Vargas.
So maybe you're not the person, so please don't accept it as a jab. How on this earth do you teach CPR online?
I am not the expert. Jody Parker is our expert on this, and she's probably, I don't think she's online. I am not sure. I'm sure it's an online course that they probably just take. I apologize. I can't really answer how it is taught.
You,
I think we should,
you make a good point.
I think we should look into that because, and I don't know who like starts that process, but I would offer that that's not a thing.
Sure. Yeah, and our online schools are probably already doing it. So like I said, I just can't speak to it. So I'd be happy to have Jody get some information from her. For
Yeah.
you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those are the two major updates to the document. Other minor updates are, as you know, the CTE and Department and Adult Education moved to being administered by the Department of Labor. So I just updated some links to guidance. That's it for the updates for this year.
I have a question on the CPR training.
Mhm.
So the funding before, I think is because we had, am I remembering correctly? They had some trained experts in CPR coming in to do the training. So without the funding to bring in those trained experts, how are the teachers required now to get a CPR certified to be able to teach health? Was that a requirement in the past?
That's a good question that
I'm gonna pay for that. Who pays for that now?
yeah.
So your health teacher, sorry, may I?
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
If you're endorsed in health, you already have to have a CPR certification. I don't believe that certification allows you to train others in CPR, but to have a health endorsement, you have to have an active CPR certification.
What do you have to be able to train others?
That is a question that I
could ask Jody Parker about that too.
Yeah, that would be a Jody.
For the funding, if there is a funding requirement, like do teachers need funding? It would be nice to know.
Where the
They're
funding.
not bringing the experts in, what the equivalent is for them just to maintain CPR certification.
I'm just gonna let you know Jody's on her way here right now. She's coming up
Oh, she is?
Thank you.
Okay, so we can ask her those questions.
this year.
Chair Hymas, when we had this assurance document last time in committee, I think that you had asked it to come back here because you had some specific questions about the assurance document in general. Do you?
Yes. So if I could, Chair, thank you for calling on me. It sounds like we didn't lose any. That was my hope, was to reduce this. It sounds like we gained. And also on top of an assurance, we gained an unfunded mandate. Is that what I'm understanding?
She's nodding her head. You can't see it.
Apologies.
Okay, okay,
Yes.
okay. So it sounds like Cindy or Chair, you and I have some work to do on our Monday meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we're trying to reduce this, and here we see, at the very end of the legislative session, at least one, maybe more could be coming. We don't know, but here we are again. So that's what my hope last month was, to wait for the end of the session, see what we could remove. But it sounds like we're just going to pile on or add one more. It doesn't sound like a pile on, but it feels like one.
yeah, and I think what we also had wondered, and maybe we can get help with this from staff, is really just to say, are any of these things that are on the insurance document things that are monitored more regularly or audited more regularly? And if they are, maybe we take them off of the insurance document and we go with that road instead. I mean, the hope is to take things off of those and put them on the insurance document, but if we're required to do those others, or we've seen a level of risk, and we're doing the other anyway, then we could take it off of this in the interim. We have a specialist, Jody Parker, here. Thank you for coming. We had some members that had a couple of questions for you. Do you want to ask her about your question about the health training in the online and how their online teachers are doing that?
Yes, so number 19 talks about CPR training. And my question was, how do you teach CPR in an online course when it requires active participation in certain things?
Great. Jody Parker, I'm the health education specialist. And so this has been a code for a while, 53G 10408. Previously, we have done this outside of assurances because we had a grant. So schools would get $6 per student who was trained in hands-on high quality CPR and AED. There is a provision inside of 53G 10408 for all brick and mortar schools have to have a psychomotor hands-on portion to CPR. When they are online, the psychomotor is waived, so they have to do something else with CPR. It could be like the CPR modules through American Heart or Red Cross have online modules that are free. And so the students would complete those online portions. They would get the cognitive piece, but not the skill piece. And that's how it is in code.
So our code allows for them to waive the,
Psychomotor, yes.
okay. I have no further question. I have an opinion, but no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I think,
I
yeah,
did we want to ask the other question?
Yeah.
In particular, I think it was about the instruction.
oh, yeah. We were just wondering with the loss of the funding, was the funding before, do I remember correctly? That
Yes, we've had
we're
funding.
bringing experts coming in
Yeah.
to teach, but so now they don't have experts coming in, the health teacher's gonna need to teach it? Or the
Correct.
LEA is gonna need to pay for it in a different way?
Yes, so we've had funding since 2014. Governor Herbert had an initiative and we got the funding, but it wasn't tied to anything. And in I think it was 2019, Senator Stevenson felt strongly that it needed to be tied to something. So there was a code and then the funds were tied to this specific code and then out of education funds. Last year, LFA rescinded the funds but kept the code. So we do have a code that requires students, which is also a standard. It's in Health 1 and Health 2. It's the first standard in both grades. In the safety and disease proportion strand, so SDP 1 in Health 1 and Health 2. And so we do still have the standard, the code is still there, but yes, Chair, the instruction would be done by either the classroom teacher now, which all health educators are certified in CPR. It's a requirement. Or as a lot of our big districts already do, they have their nurses who are all certified as well. Most of them are certified trainers, in fact, and they are the ones who train the coaches. Every other year, coaches have to be CPR training lasts for 2 years. And in most LEAs, the nurse is who does those recertifications. So a lot of our districts already use their nurses and therefore haven't been using the grant because they use their nurses. You can't pay someone to do something that they're already doing. You can't pay someone twice to do their job. So the funds are for when you bring in an outside person or when staff is doing something outside of their normal responsibility. About half of our LEAs have been utilizing the funds. The other half have been doing it on their own through their staff that they already have. We also have a lot of athletic trainers who are certified and certified trainers. And we have been, for the last 7 years, we have been using funds to put supplies in schools. So most schools actually do have the equipment they have the mannequins and the AED trainers to do this training with their staff.
So I'm guessing it's the smaller LEAs that are the half of the LEAs that are using the,
It's actually opposite of that.
it's the larger LEAs that are using the funds?
Yeah.
Not the smaller.
Yeah, our Wasatch Front are using it most.
Interesting.
Chair,
Okay. Yes.
just a quick question. What is this for? 10th grade health? Is that, I mean, I'm not seeing health, CPR dummies and training in 7th grade, middle school, but this is just for our high school students? Or am I missing something? I know I'm openly exposing myself here.
Specialist Parker.
No, Board Member Hymas, you are correct. The requirement for hands-on is in high school health, which is typically 9th or 10th. There is a requirement to teach CPR and first aid in middle school, but there is not a hands-on requirement at that point. Many of our schools do choose to teach it in both instances, 7th or 8th, and then again in 9th or 10th. But not all. It is not required that it's hands-on in middle school. It is only required that it's hands-on in high school.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Charmy. So you said that the CPR training lasts for 2 years. Who's paying? Did I hear that wrong? You're looking at me.
Certification.
Certification lasts for 2 years. Does it cost money to recertify? And so is that just an ongoing cost that would come to the LEA or the individual teacher? How's that?
So we don't certify students.
No, but
Exactly.
teachers
But
have to be certified.
educators, yes, it's part of, yes. And most of our teachers are also coaches. We have rules to our 605 requires all, oh, I pulled that one out. Requires all coaches to be certified, and certification, national certification for CPR and first aid does last 2 years.
Athletic coaches, just.
And are they paying that out of their own pocket, or or is the LEA pay for that for them to get?
I'm trying to recall who paid for that or what, or how that.
There's,
paid for.
yeah, may I?
Yes.
It varies.
Okay.
In some of our larger LEAs, the district uses discretionary, they use their own funding to, it's worth it for them to do it. But we do have a lot of smaller LEAs. I get a lot of emails and phone calls from educators and coaches who are seeking where to do it because their school doesn't support it. So it really, there is great variability of what an LEA chooses to do with that training, just like sending teachers to a conference. Some LEAs will support the cost, some can't. So there really is a lot of variability. But yes, every coach has to have, all PE teachers have to keep their renewal. That's an R277311. Driver ed has to keep their CPR and first aids active. Also R277311.
Just out of curiosity, and this is my last question, unless other members have some, what's the cost every 2 years to folks to do
$35.
2 year? Interesting. Thank you so much for your help. Anything else, board members?
Not on this issue.
Okay. All right.
I have a motion though.
We have a motion, Member Bogus.
I move that we delete number 14 because it is the same as number 10.
We have a motion on the floor to delete number 14 because it is duplicative. Any discussion to the motion?
Chair, if I may.
Yes. Yes.
Can I just, I'm driving and so I can't recall the verbiage. I don't know. I'd love to hear from staff or those who have actual eyes on it. What, is it like exact duplicative or is it?
It is exact duplicative. Unless somebody else
Yeah.
reads it.
Specialist Harvard, is that just
It's just my error. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Thanks.
just a miss. Thank you. Those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. And
I think we should forward it to the board. I'd be happy to make that motion.
yes, but I have another, the other thing when we asked to have this come back for this committee meeting was to really review the assurances to say, are there any that we can take off of this list?
Yeah.
So maybe we talk more about that in our Monday task force meeting, Chair Hymas, as you said, but I do think that's an exercise we probably need to look at just to see, are there any at all on this where we have more in-depth monitoring in other places? And until we get to a point where it can move from that type of monitoring back to assurances, can we take it off the assurances? So that was what we had asked for last month, and maybe we could continue to look at that again, if that's okay with committee members, and
I think most of these, when I linked out and I started spidering, if you will, most of them have an assurance requirement in code. They're required to be on this thing.
do all of these have insurance requirements in code? Or do you
much.
have any-
I can give you, yeah, that's something I could give you a list of what exactly does and what exactly doesn't. But yeah, most of these are, they have to be on this document or have to be assured somewhere. And they aren't assured in like an application or somewhere else. So they've got to be on here.
I think that information would be really helpful.
Yeah, you bet.
If they aren't required in code, which ones aren't? And how many are required in code to be on this document and additional
Sure.
monitoring for risk?
Mhm.
That would be really helpful.
You bet.
Thank you so much. So then for the meantime, we have another motion. Let's see,
I would,
do you want to?
I would move that the committee recommend that the board approves the annual LEA assurance document as amended.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor that the committee recommends that the board approves the LEA annual assurances document as amended. Those in favor say aye.
I,
Those opposed? Hey, I'm gonna do something that's rare. We don't do this very often, but because we're going to take a deep dive into property taxes, we're gonna take a 5-minute break and then just come back and have our heads ready to, are you okay?
I'm okay, I think, but
Are you sure?
For a break.
these guys might disagree. Madam Chair, if possible, could we do the employee recognitions because
Sure.
they go to, before we take the break, that way they can get back to work. And we just do those real quick.
So,
And even if we just do the audit, results for Medicaid for the USDB and those 2 employees.
yeah, actually, so what's being requested right now with objection from the group is to move item 2.5, agenda item 2.5 to now and then come back for 2.4. Do we also want to do the USIMS and Utah grants report now and
That
then
might
take a
take a
break?
little bit longer. If we just do at your direction, Madam Chair, if we just do the employee recognition, then take the break, then go to Dell, I think we'll be okay. If you're okay with.
Okay, that's just fine. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do that.
So, Madam Chair, if we could recognize our 2 USDB employees, Michaela or
Benyon.
Benyon, sorry, come on, USDB employees come forward. Please. So sorry, I don't have your last name, so Mikkel Benyon and Kylie Richter. So Richter, I say that right? Good.
Yep.
Okay, these 2 USDB employees, as you know, we've been doing a lot of work with Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind. Last year, or maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, there were some adverse findings with Medicaid where the board had to basically help USDB with $700,000 to cover the Medicaid findings or their adverse findings. This year, due to the efforts of these 2 employees, there was no findings for Medicaid. So we're getting the house in order, and we sincerely appreciate their efforts in that vein or that aspect of financial management and control. So will you, Madam Chair, if it's okay, will you please introduce yourselves to, I said your names, slaughtered them bad, but if you will introduce yourselves and tell us what you do at USDB, I think that would be a value add for the group. So.
Great.
Yeah, I am Mikkel Benyon. I run our school-based Medicaid program, which I oversee. I make sure everything's, getting done. I do our audits. I just kind of run the whole program. And then I oversee our early intervention Medicaid as well, which Kylie pretty much handles most of that. So, yeah.
And I am the assistant and I just help with assisting both programs and making sure that they're running smoothly and everything's getting done. So.
And I would say it is a huge job.
Mm.
It's a huge job. And unless you've seen some, and I just am speaking from a district perspective, one district, seeing what our people did who were helping to oversee Medicaid. I mean, there are so many details that need to be considered that we just really appreciate you and your attention to detail, because you wouldn't be able to have an audit like this if you weren't very fastidious and conscientious. So thank you for that good work. We really appreciate you both.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well done,
Thank
ladies.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And we should probably also recognize our staff too. in our audits, most recent audits. Was that going to be on your list?
Yes, yeah, that was part of the recognitions as well. So, so without further ado, Sam and Dale, want to recognize you both and Winona for the awesome results with the MSP audit. Do you want to come forward and speak to that just real quick?
Yeah.
So, just while they're moving forward, as you know, well as the committee knows and board, all the full board and the public knows, the minimum school program is the largest funding aspect of our operations here. It filters down or is passed through to the LEAs. So these two gentlemen, and is Winona here? Or?
Winona is traveling.
Well, so we'll recognize Winona as well. So the three, it's all a team effort. I mean, led by Deborah, Sam, because we have internal accounting and we have school finance. But for consecutive years now, and due to the efforts of both these gentlemen and Winona, others that have been in these positions before, we continue to see great results from audits of the minimum school program. I mean, to be fair, you know, because it is so large, when we are audited by the Office of the State Auditor, right, they have to sample, you know, they have to take particular programs within the MSP, but year in and year out, and using different programs each year, these gentlemen and Winona and their predecessors before have done a just phenomenal job at managing and controlling a very complex and difficult funding program overall, the minimum school program. So we want to just recognize them for a very good and favorable audit, because that's what it's about. It's ensuring that every dollar is accounted for and goes to the students correctly and in accordance with the laws and policies that you have set. So as the board. So Sam, anything, Dale?
Yeah, I just maybe a fun anecdote. We had some folks who have done school finance in Idaho that tried to help a charter school here in Utah, and they couldn't do it. It was too complicated in their view. Utah's funding formulas can be complicated, especially property tax equalization. I know we're doing a deep dive into that, but just really appreciate the support for our team, the minimum school program automation developer team and leadership team there, Katrina and Jared and everyone has been really helpful, as well as we use automation to double check our work, and Dale and Winona have done amazing work you should show them sometime how many calculations go into just one program.
We will next month, at least
it's-
for just give them a sense of MSPA.
Yeah.
So
MSP automation. So that's been a task or a big project we've been working on for several years. We finally are there. So yes. So thanks to continuing efforts on the part of the team.
Scott, can I say,
You do whatever you want, but you gotta have the chair's permission. So
Chair,
Of course. Yes, please.
if I may, yeah, so Dale Frost, Minimum School Program Administrator. I'm in my 5th year of doing this, I think, and getting better at it every time. And it seems like the minimum school program audit is definitely not the most popular audit, because every year I'm retraining auditors. It's like the most junior folks, and it's like holding their hand on trying to go through statute and train them on all the formulas that they have to review. And this is the first time we got a 100% clean audit. Fiscal 25 was the first year that we fully aligned to MSPA, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And it's not that. So like one example where there was a required plan that hadn't been implemented, and that was a finding in a prior year, and it was so that plan, I mean, it wasn't implemented because of the general idea of trying to reduce reporting requirements, but you know, they look very granularly at rule and statute as we do to make sure, and you know, when we are, but we've been going through this process to say every step of it, what is our authority to do that? And it has to tie back to statute and rule, or at least directive from the legislature and or the board. It's not like we have a $3 billion slush fund and I give it to my favorite districts, or what have you. But it was exciting to get a completely clean audit. Usually there's got a little thing here and there. And it was also exciting to see that the LEAs are improving on those programs too.
Yeah.
Great. So for years, we have done really well and not had substantive findings.
No, they're not substantive.
Like the tiniest, like crossing T's and dotting I's types of findings, and we had none of those. And that's because you all triple check everything. You have so many safety nets in place to make sure that what you're doing is responsible with these dollars. So thank you. Very impressive.
Madam Chair, in addition to that, we did also receive favorable findings or recognition of our financial statement audits. That's due to if you don't close year end right, you don't open right. If you don't open right, then you don't close right. So the preparation that goes into, because we come out of the session, we go right into the setting of the budget, and guess what? We're almost at the end of the fiscal year 26. So the staff should be recognized under Deborah's leadership for financial audit statement clarity and thing too. So.
Deborah, we know you were working all day yesterday and have been working every day just trying to get going on this again. So thank you. It's a lot of hard work.
And then lastly, and without further ado, we need to recognize these gentlemen, Sam, especially with his leadership over John Palmer section. Despite all of the turmoil going on in Washington, D.C., it's very, very important that we facilitate and then support LEA setting of their ICP rates. And John Palmer did that. So Sam, at the chair's direction, could you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's a ICP indirect cost pool, and just making sure that LEAs in some cases can charge what we call indirect costs. So it's overhead, right, for administering the program. There's both restricted and unrestricted rates depending on the programs, and some programs don't allow it at all. But just working to get those correct and approved by the feds has been an endeavor, and we want to thank John Palmer and his team for doing that. So John's actually in Disney World. His wife is at the same conference as Director Iwasaki. So
good.
But
good. I'm glad that he is there. I'm sure all of us wish maybe we were as well. But thank you for that. And I will say that these changes federally have resulted in some serious work at the state level, with even looking at grants management and different types of things. We've had to make a lot of different changes and had long wait times for different funding issues and things like that. So while we're working out some of these bump string transitions, I appreciate all of you and your extra work on that. Deputy Jones, I think
that concludes the portion of 2.5.
And I think
so
I'm thinking we should do
direction. Yes, ma'am.
2.51 and 2.52 as well, and then come back to 2.4. We'll then take a break and then come back to 2.4.
Yes, ma'am.
Would that be okay?
Direction, yeah. Will you call on Director Felt for the use of portion?
We have a USIMS update, and IT Director Jared Felt.
Thank you, Chair. Jared Felt, USBE IT Director. So changed the format a little bit for this month on the PMR. One thing I wanted to, as we're coming out of the legislative session this year, I just wanted to briefly touch on the critical constraint piece that we have at the top of the PMR. So a little background: at the time of the USIMS legislation, the funding was appropriated for a scope of work. So and that was to replace 28 different legacy systems, and put that into a unified modern platform. So when new legislation sets additional requirements, we do our absolute best to submit realistic timelines and funding requests needed to support those changes in our fiscal responses to the legislature. But oftentimes, as you know, in other areas, that funding and those timelines get reduced by the time the bill passes. So what that means for us is we are left absorbing that change in budget and timeline that was not originally planned for. So the funding is one thing, but the timeline is critical as well, because if the timeline is shortened, we have to build those requirements in our legacy systems. And that's a challenge because we are trying to move FTEs over from maintaining our legacy systems over to USIMS to replace those contracted supported, and USIMS is fully supported by contractors. And so we have to continue to work, build a new plane while flying the existing one. And we have limited staff. We have about 7 software developers that maintain all of our 28 systems. So that, I mean, we're running really tight in general anyway. So that extends, all of our work, and it's a complex project to begin with. As you know, we've got Cactus that was developed in the late 80s. We've got Utrex that's just very old. And so I just wanted to point that out as just a reminder as we work with legislators and sometimes board. We don't get many changes from the board that affect our systems, but just keep that in mind. So subject to any questions, Chair, if it's okay, we've got the product owners for each domain online, and they're just going to touch briefly on the current adoption metrics. And then we can answer any questions if there are any.
I have one quick question.
Sure.
Do we only have 7 because we can't find people to fill the positions, or do we only have 7 because we need funding for more and that's all the funding we have?
Since I've been here, we've only had 7. Now we were able to move a couple of FTEs over to USIMS to work on that, but it's hard to remove all of those out of the mix on the legacy system. So our agreement with the legislature that we would continue to sustain USIMS once it's built with our existing staffing. But so running really tight, it just makes it a challenge when we have to keep building things, and going to the superintendent's analogy yesterday on a house. You scope a house, you start building it, but then we're adding another wing while we're, so it makes it really tough.
Yeah. And the wings are added because changes are happening legislatively or within different departments here in the building or things like that. And so we're constantly having to add. It's not like you have this checklist and then we're done. It's like you have this checklist, but now we need this in addition, and this in addition, and this in addition. And so
and it's not like it's not necessary. It's not always easy to make those changes because with our old legacy system, everything is intertwined. So you make a change on one, the data passes through to another old system. And so it just compounds, and we have to just make sure that it gets to the end of the row. So
thank you.
So Tim, I think, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Tim, go ahead and introduce yourself before.
Yep. Morning, board members. Tim Davis, product owner of the educator domain. So the educator domain currently has every prospective educator and or existing educator in the state going through USIMS for their background check, their ethics review, and if they hold a professional license, they renew that license and they can print their professional license through USIMS. Associate and LEA specific license renewals and printing are done in-house with our educator licensing team and the Cactus system. We have all 10 university educator prep programs here in the state of Utah submitting recommendations through USIMS. And currently we have 104 pilot users from 41 LEAs using the assignment and employment features that we've rolled out to USIMS production.
Thank you, Tim. So, and I just want to add, if it's okay, Chair. So we're in a difficult phase on the educator team where we're in that migration phase where we've got the new and the old, and they've got to talk to each other until we can migrate everything over. So they're working through that, and they're doing a good job. So, Mark?
Yes, good morning, board. Today with the student backpack, we have 101 districts that are actively using that through Aspire, the assessment data portion. The infrastructure required to not only receive and validate and work with those SIS vendors to surface that student data is being built incrementally. So rather than do a all at once type of integration, which in the past has proven problematic, we're literally trying to deliver data sets as we go so that our LEAs can start using that. So we're in the process right now of working with our vendors. 6 of the 8, we are actively going through that testing phase and making sure that the data is correct. Kind of helps sets us up too for future work to ensure that they understand how that data is being exchanged. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Don?
Morning, board. Don Moody, product owner with the finance team. The main component that we've been working on right now is the integration with 7 vendors that the LEAs use to manage their to keep track of their finances and their accounting. Those 7 vendors have been coordinating with the USIMS finance team in being able to automate an API when the LEAs approve their budget and actual submissions to send those to USIMS. I've previously mentioned that we have one vendor that has successfully provided data. Since my last update to y'all, 4 other vendors are preparing to complete their initial LEA submissions, and we'll be working with them over the next 4 to 6 weeks to troubleshoot that process and confirm that their data matches what's expected. We are using Power BI, which is a software reporting tool to help visualize and confirm that data. We're also working to, rather than allocate licensing, to access Power BI directly, which is cost prohibitive, we are building an interface into USIMS to show that information in Power BI. So that's kind of a brief highlight of what we're working on in the finance committee, and happy to answer any questions if y'all have any.
Thank you, Don. And so just to close on that part, you heard them all talk about vendors pretty much. So it's not only the taking over of our legacy systems in-house, but it's also working and coordinating with all these different vendors. And then we are, reliant on them getting the work done as well. So it's a challenging project, but we're getting through it.
And then who's doing that respectively for Aspire? Because we are kind of like a vendor.
Correct. So
We got to do all that too.
yeah, so we have a project manager that oversees the Aspire system, and we call it a backlog. That's in their backlog. They with the student team, they've already integrated with the backpack piece of that. But the team is working alongside, and it does help in some ways because we work so closely. We're in the same room, and so we can work out some of those bugs before we go out to vendors as well. So, but they are actively developing that too. But we have limited staff there, and we've got a lot of, Aspire's late 90s, so we're updating an older system as well.
Lot of work to do.
Yeah, there's
very limited FTE.
Yeah.
Thanks for everything you're doing.
Well, you're welcome. We appreciate the support. So thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what is the cost of, say, Power BI or Tableau or Domo or something like that to do the things that we're trying to do as we finish up the USIMS system?
Great question. So we have Power BI with our Microsoft licensing already. We do have to buy some different licensing for what we're doing with USIMS. Tableau, Aaron, I think, is here. He could speak to the cost of that. They use that for the data and statistics side. It's hard, and I can get you a breakout of it, but it's usually included with our Microsoft subscription license. So
Okay, so he just mentioned that it was cost prohibitive, so that.
oh, I see. Okay, Dawn, can you maybe explain that a little bit?
As far as apologies, don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but like the reason why we're building what's essentially an interface rather than having the individual, like when we talk about users connecting to finance data, it's not just folks within USBE. It's also business administrators and finance members of each individual LEA. So we're talking several hundred folks overall that need to see the information in Power BI. So rather than allocating licenses to those hundreds of folks, building the interface, what's called a wrapper, to basically to show the information in USIMS is much more cost effective and efficient for USBE.
Yeah, so the licensing, and thank you, Don, for clarifying. The licensing we have is for internal use. When we want to start sharing those reports out with external users, the licensing increases quite a bit. And with all of the LEAs that need to see this data, it would get quite expensive. So the team is, like Don said, building a wrapper. So we embed that report inside of USIMS so that they can still access it, but we don't need an additional license.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Rebecca?
Good morning. Rebecca Nelson, Director of Grants Administration, responsible for grants compliance in Utah grant system. Today's presentation to the committee, if you would, is intended just to be a brief update on Utah grants progress and development. Last month, we reported that there were some issues with our vendor, specifically related to outstanding customer service tickets and development work that was put on hold as a result of the number of ongoing issues that we were having with our production environment. I'm very happy to please that those issues have been addressed. While we still have outstanding tickets with the vendor for ongoing issues, those tickets are being actively worked and addressed, and we are down to a much more manageable number. Currently have 9 open tickets for ongoing issues. That is pretty standard to have things that we work through. We were also able to turn on the development again. So we had 2.1C development work, which we did roll out actually last week. So that is in production, and my team is working on getting the trainings together and informing all of the Utah grants users on all of those updates, and also improving a lot of our external training and data or information, sending out information to people about the functionality of the system. We feel like we really have an opportunity and a need to increase our training, especially as it relates to some of these new development items that will help our LEAs to reduce burden. That said, things are going well. Are there questions for me?
I have them, but do other members have questions?
Go ahead.
First. When you say there are 9 open tickets and how we've had problems with the tickets in the past, sort of building up, are those tickets that we as a user and a coordinator of Utah grants are having questions that we're needing help with from the vendor? Or do the tickets arise from the LEAs and concern that the LEA has that we're trying to help resolve as an intermediary with the vendor?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both. Everything comes through my office, so we're the ones that are actually reporting the tickets. But if the LEA reports an issue that we're not able to resolve, we will elevate that up to the vendor for them to fix. So a lot of those issues are reported from the LEAs, but they're an ongoing issue so we'll manage them and make sure that they're fixed within the system. So it's not necessarily that the LEAs are reporting or asking for new development items, but that's handled in a separate way. That's new development. The tickets are really, there's a problem, something needs to be fixed.
I don't want to put you on the spot. So if you just say, I can't answer this right now, that's okay. But what percentage of the time do you feel like we are able to help LEAs that don't need to go to the vendor level?
90. it would be my best guess. A lot of times it's just clarification or training or how to get to something that they don't know how to access. It's really things that we can just answer questions or get, make a quick little tweak on our end. For the most part, we're not system administrators or Salesforce experts. So if it requires any more than kind of that level, then we have to send that to.
How big is your team?
I have Sarah and Louie and myself.
So 3 of you.
Yes.
For 178 LEAs that are dealing with a lot in grants management. Right.
And also internal staff.
And also internal staff. So you also have your work cut out for you. It's busy. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Job security.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
Well, we hope, we hope they stay. Thank you so much. And so it's 10:15. We say 8-minute break. Does that sound doable? Okay, we'll pick back up in 8 minutes and we'll deep dive into property taxes. Everybody's favorite subject.
I don't I see people, yeah, so while you're talking, you're on that.
Same, they were the same ones.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So Cindy, if it's at all helpful, like I was wondering, I'm one of those tickets. So I'm an example of an internal one
Okay.
where when we adjust budgets up or down, if the budgets are higher than the total payments so far, you can't process it. You can't essentially invoice through Utah grants. We have a separate process for that. So I have a report that says area payments where you have to address negative amounts. That report was providing new data, so I had to kind of manufacture it. So she had to go back to REI to get them to fix that.
So that you could do that when in those instances.
It turns out what was happening was.
I have to do this because
Good thing yesterday.
I'm like, no.
Oh,
We were doing A and B together.
you want him to be himself?
But REI.
That's not Scott.
That's helpful. Thank you.
It's just.
I did a good thing yesterday.
Of that. That was probably one of the ones where I pulled it out. Yeah, that one came from me where I was just, hey, I don't need this, but if it isn't working again, it's on.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Well, they usually have the flip flops. You said it.
Well, because usually when you just.
So.
He has child love.
You have a bunch of spreadsheets.
It's the only way you're.
I'm like, sir, you can't get out of your car because I don't know how to get you out when I get there.
It's at time level on your level, not.
Luckily, it's not.
So I'll just be working on sessions.
Man.
Stuff for the rest of the day.
So
Monday.
I feel bad, but it's not my fault.
I don't know, let's start with. Like, if I
Right.
I'm a white
It's not. Next week, we have to get it done.
I guess. He got in big fat trouble for that one. Now I just tease him about it.
Sure. So yes, yeah. So.
I'm like, where did they go?
What days?
We have two.
She's
But actually.
So if you can get, the one nice part is because we're now,
legislature.
you know,
You're still muted. Yeah, you can hit that red button and it will unmute you.
We are unmuted.
Chair, can I share my screen? Just get that ready.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
Okay. Okay. Shall we unmute?
We're unmuted.
Oh, we're unmuted. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's great to see all of you after that break. So we're ready for our deep dive into property taxes. And we have our amazing Dale Frost, who has a tax mind like I've never seen before. And he's gonna help to take our minds. If we could even get somewhere close to where yours is, I think we would be grateful. So let's go ahead and start. Thank you. And members, I'm just going to say, stop us whenever you have a question. If I don't see, this, let's have this conversation be a little bit more casual. And so you don't need to, wait for me. And we've got Chair Hymas online. And if you have questions, just jump in whenever needed. All right, let's go ahead, Dale.
Great, thanks. And Chair, if it's okay with you, if I could share a very short personal anecdote and then put on my professor hat for a couple minutes in Tax Policy 101, just to level set before we get into the actual bills. I think it would help us all if that works for you. So yes, I am Dale Frost, Minimum School Program Administrator. Been here since 2019 and still having fun. And why do I love being in this position? I enjoy it because I can be at that nexus of tax policy, budget policy, and education, all things that I am very interested in. I firmly believe that, if you want to see somebody's priorities, see where they spend their money. I also firmly believe, well, I don't like taxes myself, but I also understand that they fund very important things. So, and I also love just viewing human behavior and economics and those sort of things. So when did I find out I love tax policy? So in 2009, I was in the public finance class in my MPA program at BYU, and we had a guest speaker who was one of the tax commissioners at the time. And he said, did you know, I don't know if this is still true, but it was true in 2009, that according to Tennessee tax law, 6 donuts qualifies as a snack. 6 or less donuts. And you're like, what? Because Tennessee at the time, they had a different tax rate for snacks and convenience foods than they did groceries. So some poor schmuck in Tennessee had to come up with that threshold to say, okay, if you eat 5 donuts or 6 donuts, that could be a snack, but nobody's going to eat 7 donuts. That's groceries. That must be for later. I don't know about you. If they're really good donuts, I could get to 7. And so that just right there got my attention, because it's, you don't think that tax policy is going to be about how, a donut eating contest, but those are the kind of things that you like at the end of the day, it sounds like a good idea. It's like, well, groceries are more important than snacks and convenience food, so we could tax them at a different rate. But if you go down that path, then you have to get into these weird conversations about what qualifies as a snack, and we deal with this all the time here, and you hear about some of these conversations and what qualifies as food, because we have a different food tax than the regular sales tax. And honestly, I don't know a lot of that minutia, because looking at the screen here, you can see, public education is the largest part of the state budget. I also want to say that another reason why I love my job is I could put on a bunch of hats. I sometimes play lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. I play accountant. I'm definitely not an accountant, ask Deborah. But today I'm going to just play professor for a few minutes on tax policy. So what are the funding sources we're talking about $10 billion. This is not a small chunk of change. And like you said, Chair, these are hard-earned tax dollars, and they're sacred funds. The vast majority come from income taxes and property taxes. You can see that less than 1% comes from sales taxes. Anybody on the committee know what that is? That's 64 million primarily. What's most of that?
Yes.
Nope.
I think state-owned stores.
Liquor.
Liquor tax.
Interesting.
The liquor tax that goes to pay for child nutrition is most of that 64 million. So I think the e-cigarette funds are in there too, but most of those kind of, we call sin taxes, are in that 64 million. The vast majority are from, and the other there, that's land trust primarily. So today we're going to talk about property taxes primarily, because you constitutionally oversee LEAs, and LEAs, well, school districts in this respect, they set property taxes. $3 billion of property taxes. Well, actually, it's not 3 billion. Some of that gets set by the state. I'm going to go into that. And then the legislature sets income taxes. So we'll go a little bit into income taxes, almost nothing on sales taxes, and we're going to do a deep dive on property taxes. But happy to try to answer other questions. I am definitely more of an expert on property taxes, but I will not pretend to know everything on that front. I actually, while I interviewed for this job, I also was interviewing for a job at the tax commission, and I'm glad I'm here.
Here too.
But so
I
hopefully,
do have a question.
yeah, sure.
You may answer it later, but you said, I'm curious as to if the legislature sets more through the basic levy, or if the local LEAs or districts set more through their combined levies. I'm just curious, you're going to probably cover that, but that is a question.
I want to show you, before I dive into the slides, a little bit more on the mechanics of the basic tax levy, and then I'll show you the different levies that districts can set.
Okay.
If there's something I don't cover, please let me know. So my top tax policy lessons that I took away from my master's program that got drilled into my head, but I also do believe, number one, good tax policy is a broad-based low rate. So take that broad-based low rate. Why? Because the more you tax, the lower your rate can be on whatever it is. The lower your rate is, the less the incentive to try to evade taxes. And perverse incentives, deadweight loss, if you want to get into nerdy economics and those sort of things. So broad-based low rate. And then Utah's three-legged stool. Has any of you heard that metaphor before? And the three-legged stool is what? That funds
Income.
state and local local governments,
Income.
Sales tax.
not federal. Yeah, we're not talking about the federal, so state and local. So income,
Sales.
property and sales tax. Yeah, sales tax is not top of mind for us because that's what funds the general fund. But certainly if we want to go into a lot of the tax policy debates, and really the last 30 years of tax policy issues really relate to the fact that income taxes have been growing faster than sales taxes. And when you have a constitutional earmark, the legislature that makes it more challenging to balance the budget. So
The sales tax part of what is on that screen is not the total amount that the state's collecting in sales tax. That's
No.
just what is coming to us.
that's just what's coming to K-12. So there are billions in sales taxes, and those go to fund, corrections, public safety, health and human services, all of those kind of things. And that goes into, if you remember, there was the 2020 constitutional amendment so that they added to that earmark, not just K-12 in higher ed, but they being the legislature with that constitutional earmark change are now allowed to use income taxes to pay for people with disabilities and children. And so that's all part of this conversation that we're talking about. So yes, if you add the federal dollars and sales taxes and everything else, it's about a $30 billion state budget. 10 billion of our funds. Now, not 100% of this 10 billion actually makes it in the state budget. Some of it is actually outside of it, but the vast majority of it is in the state budget. I think it's about 8 billion of that. So yeah, K-12 makes up about 8 billion of the $30 billion full state budget. And the vast majority of that is income taxes at the state level.
We hear often two stats. Number one, that we spend less per pupil than any state in the country. Is that an accurate statistic?
It has been for years. We've been making a lot of progress. If we're not 50th, we used to be below Guam. But we might be 47th, 48th, but on a per pupil basis, we are, one of the last, if not the last state.
But then I also hear that the largest percentage of our budget goes to education compared to other states.
It's been years since I looked at that, but that's also true. Two things can be true at the same time.
Right. So,
and a lot of it is because there's a lot of federal land that doesn't generate property taxes.
Right.
If you're New Jersey and 1% of your land is federal land and you're generating property taxes on 99%, and there's a history of property taxes that are 3 times higher than we have here, that it really explains a lot of the discrepancy in funding, at the end of the day. So does that answer your question, Vice Chair Kelly? Okay, so these are the 6 levies that school districts have to levy or can levy. So the basic school levy, that's set by the state. I'll go into that. That's 800 million in fiscal 25. You'll see that's about 860 million going into fiscal 27. The charter school levy is the smallest of that. And USBE is actually the most involved in that $40 million levy. We have almost nothing to do with GO bond payments. So that's when you go out for an election to build XYZ. That's what those, so you'll see debt service levy, that's to pay for those GO bond payments. And then you have 3 local levies. When we say local there, it's because those are the levies that are directly determined by your LEA, your school district boards. Indirectly by going out to voters for the GO bond payments. but you still have to get that approved by voters. So that's why I say in truth and taxation, that whole process, we're really talking about those three levies. So when you hear about changes to the basic school levy, that does not impact truth and taxation. The reason being is that the legislature sets that in an open and public forum. A cynical view could be that the legislature, gets to choose its own rules. So depending on how you want to look at it. But so we're talking about $1.8 billion are the local levies. Yes.
So the districts can choose on the bottom, but they have to collect property taxes based on the legislative basic levies. They don't get a choice.
So you can argue that they do have a choice, but it's a gun to the head kind of choice. So for the basic school levy, if you don't, as a district, levy the basic school levy, you opt out of the basic school program entirely. So you get 0 WPUs.
It's an illusion of freedom that's not really there.
The only district that has even considered it, and the only district where it could possibly make sense is Park City.
They haven't.
They have not. They have to cut a check for the difference between their WPUs and their basic levy. And I'll show you the spreadsheet that's calculating. You've heard of recapture. It's going to be about $30 million this year that they pay back to the state. So on the basic school levy and the basic school program, that's why that is, a fully equalized program. And we can debate whether it actually is equalized or not. But the same kind of student at Park City gets the same funding as a student in San Juan for that piece of it. What really throws the fairness out of whack are those bottom levies. Park City can levy a penny, and the resorts pay them millions of dollars. And so that gets to the voted and board local levy program. If you remember, there's a state guarantee that tries to equalize part of that. Those are those two bottom, the board local and the voted local. Those are both for operations, M&O. The capital local levy is for capital. That doesn't factor into the voted and board local levy program. We have a small capital outlay foundation program that sort of is kind of an equalization formula. It's sort of not. I did, recommend that might be part of the 5% conversation, and maybe board member Booth, wanted to egg my house, but he's too nice. Because NEBO does receive a lot of those dollars because they are growing amongst the districts. But that has to do with those two middle ones, the GEO bond payments and capital local levy. NEBO, if you look at those two, has a very high debt load for the building of their buildings relative to other districts. So depending on if you're a high growth district or not, you might see a heavy tax burden in one of these areas versus another one. So this will become salient when Alpine splits, the Lake Mountain District, the Saratoga Springs Eagle Mountain area. They're going to have a lot of need and not very much property tax base. Be prepared to see some news headlines about that and what they do with it. Okay. All right. That's what I was going to. Okay. So what's USBE's role in all of this? What I would say is it's actually fairly minimal, which is, interesting if you look at the constitutional authority of general, oversight and supervision. The USBE is not a taxing entity. Let's go over just to kind of give you a flavor of some of our involvement. By broader R, it's, what does staff do? And that usually means me and my team. Sorry that my partner in crime, Winona, she's traveling to Idaho. She would be here. I'd introduce her. And she and Sam, we're a small team, but we punch above our weight. Okay, so this is the minimum basic tax rate. What you do so that's that first top level, it's about 15 increments, 14 something. you net that against the value of WPU. So for the vast majority of districts, let's take Alpine, for example, their WPUs right now are in grades 1 through 12. That's just that one program worth $358 million. We're estimating that their basic levy revenues is about $80 million. So we're actually paying them from the income tax side only $278 million. So you can see that there are 5 districts for which this is negative here. And what that means is that we actually net out other programs. So Daggett, for example, they don't get their full allocation from kindergarten from the state. They only get 19,000 of the 33,000. They get 0 from grades 1 through 12. Why? And this is from the state because their local levy covers that. It's not that they're not getting the funding. It's what's the local share versus the state share. It's slightly higher in Daggett. Park City is the highest. I'll get back to them in a second. North Summit, Rich, and South Summit, we're netting against things like NES and class size reduction. These are all programs within the basic school program you've probably heard of. And then over here, this is Park City. You can see that we're estimating they're generating 53 million just from the basic levy. Their WPUs across all programs are worth 23 million. And that's why we're estimating that their recapture will be just under 30 million this year. So every year at the end, we reconcile with Park City to make sure we're getting to the same number. And then they do a PTIF transfer back to the state. And Deborah says, thank you, and applies that somewhere. I don't know.
What's the benefit to them to do that instead of just keeping their property tax and opting out of the WPU program? Do they actually get more money doing it this way in recapture than they would if they just kept their property taxes?
So if they wanted to opt out of the basic levy and provide tax relief to their citizens, they could provide $53 million in tax relief, right? But they would have to cut from their budget $23 million. Does that make sense?
What if they didn't offer tax relief and they just had the same amount of taxes, they just kept them in-house instead of using the WPU program?
So the way they would do it would be to raise their local levies commensurately, right? You know, if they forego the basic levy and then raise their local levies for the same amount. So then they're saying, we don't want to deal with the basic school program, and you legislature, they could do that.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because the basic levy is giving them so much that their straight chosen ones would have to raise significantly.
Remember that when we're talking about property taxes, we have to talk about it's not very helpful to talk about property taxes in general.
Yeah, I'm with you now.
You have to talk about a specific levy, because a specific levy, it's different who sets it and the purpose of it is different, right? So they would opt out of this, right? So they're 53 million of the 792 million.
Mm-hmm.
And actually this is last year. The numbers are slightly different here. And what you could say is they could increase their levies down here.
Mm-hmm.
But the levies, the amount they receive from the board and local levy is actually more than the value of their WPUs, which is why it's inequitable, you know? But their argument, and I think rightfully so, is these are property taxpayers there that are choosing to tax themselves. They should be able to do that and fund their local schools. So one reason why I like tax policy is that we're talking about trade-offs. There's no silver bullet, you know? Okay, so let me show you the basic levy for this year. So over here, this is House Bill 1. This is the base budget bill. Okay, 53F 2301, minimum basic tax rate for the fiscal year. You can see down here that they struck this 810 million and now it's 866 million. And the rate's going from 1408 to 1352. You know how we talked about with the certified tax rate that rates float down as valuations are going up? You can see that here.
So they raised property taxes.
They did, but it's not as much as it looks like here. And just, like almost all of my answers, when you ask about something, the answer is it's complicated, and I'll have to show you why. House Bill, there used to be, until House Bill 10 from the 2025 general session, there used to be what was called the WPU value rate, which was an add-on to the basic levy. And I'll show you over here. So you can see here, when you look at the statutes, here's the minimum basic tax rate. There was one that's effective through this year, and then there's going to be one that supersedes that, or that was effective and then will supersede that. So if you're looking at this one here, so here's 810 million, here's 31,508. Let me show you over here. All right, so we've talked about the Common Data Committee. So that's the LFA, Office of Legislative Fiscal Analyst, GOPB, the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and the Tax Commission, and USBE. Every year we come together and say, okay, by district, by property tax category, you can see LFA thinks that Alpine will generate 64.5, that their valuation is this. GOPB was slightly lower, USBE was slightly higher, tax was even higher than that. That's tax commission. And we decided jointly to take the average of those. And why do we do all of this? To estimate. So over here, I just wanted you to see these numbers here. The 810 and the 31,508, that equals 842. That's our revenue target. And then one other thing here, we were talking about how property tax is the certified tax rate process. You have to go through truth and taxation if you're going to set a rate above the certified tax rate. Does that ring a bell? And the certified tax rate is what will generate what it did last year plus new growth. So for 2025, new construction, new growth. So this is everything, new businesses being built, new houses, to a new porch at times. And we'll get into, there's actually variation on how you define new growth county by county. But this is the total value of new growth. So that's how we get to this 866, 842. And here's the 1352. Now going back to the base budget bill.
Take the average prediction plus the new growth.
So we take last year's revenue estimate, we add new growth, and then that, unless the legislature does otherwise, they basically are following the certified tax rate process. So the legislature can choose whatever number they want. They could bring this number up or they can bring it down. And that would change the levy. But that's how the basic levy gets set. So, and this is why it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. Technically, you're increasing the amount. This 810 is going to 866. That's more property tax revenues. But if you're looking at the advantage of truth in taxation, if the state were a district, they wouldn't have to go through truth in taxation because they're not setting above that. They're just adopting the certified tax rate.
They're not setting above what?
They're not setting above the last year's number plus new growth.
Oh, I see.
So here's last year's number and plus new growth. Because so is it a new property tax? Depends on how you want to define it, right? According to truth and taxation, no. Is it more money? Obviously, 866 is higher than 842. So that's how the basic levy gets set every year. And a lot of legislators don't even realize that there's property tax implications from the base budget.
How come they don't float the rate down like the districts have to float their rate down when the property values increase?
They are. You can see that this 1352 is estimated to generate more. It's 1352 is less than 1408.
They floated it down to get comparable.
Right. So no, this is the floating of the rate down. And the floating of the rate down is us estimating what the valuations will be. And then if the valuations are going up, which is what we're estimating as a common data committee, then the rate will float down. So the same principle is applying here. But then that goes to, there was a freeze for 5 years on the basic rate. If we want to go into those details, we can, because there is a question. I put a lot of supplemental slides in there. There was a lot of great material from the interim meeting from October from Revenue and Tax Interim. If you are ever bored, I would suggest you watch that. I thought it was fascinating. I can go through some of those if you want, but the Office of OLAG, the Office of the Legislative Auditor General, they went into why have property taxes gone up so dramatically over the last few years.
That the legislature did cause them to go.
And their main answer is that freeze.
Oh.
And then the secondary answer is local increases above that. Okay. Charter school local replacement. So that $40 million here. So that when I'm talking about charter school local replacement, that's a really important funding stream, for charter schools. You know, after the K-12 formula, probably charter school local replacement is their next most important program. It's flexible dollars and it's a lot of money per student. There's this whole formula where we basically take the district property tax revenues, the guarantee revenues, and then you divide by the ADM to get a per pupil amount. And then a portion of that, 25% of part of that, has to be levied. So these dollars right here, this $40 million, this is what's generating that charter school local levy. So when you look at your property tax rate, the one that we as USBE directly calculate, but we don't have any kind of say in that. It's just the formula. But that's why I say of the charter school local levy, we are most involved because I actually calculate this. And then we reconcile at the end of the year over here. We get data from the treasurer's office and say, okay, by month, how much did the charter school local levy for Alpine District? You can see it's 43,000. Most of the property taxes come in between November and January. You can see 157, 2.7 million, 692,000. And then we compare what was actually collected to those calculated amounts. And if you're over, then the property tax amount gets reduced for the following year. If you're under, it goes up for the following year. So there's always this kind of true up. So we provide this to the tax commission directly because we have data that they don't have. So when I go back to here and we say that the legislature, we are most, as USBE, most involved in these two rates. Over here on the GEO bond and capital local levy, we have that small capital outlay program. And then we also have the small district capital project fund. Those take into account the local rates. So, local effort, that kind of goes into some of our calculations. And then the voted and board local levy guarantee, as I said, that's that 300 million that goes for these two rates down here. Hopefully gives you an idea. So that's together, if you sum all of that up, that's the $3 billion that I'm talking to you about on the property tax side. Now, that was a lot, I know, but I thought it'd be important to give you some context. I could answer why a property tax has gone up so much. I could answer, but I thought now let me jump into the actual bills, quickly do that, and then answer your questions. Does that work for you, Chair?
Yeah, who did the audit that indicated the freeze as the highest reason that the
OLAG.
OLAG did it?
Yeah.
Not OSA.
No, that was OLAG. Yeah, and I have a link in here. Right. So the OLAG audit, if you want to read it, it's right here. It's that last. I would suggest you read that. It's a good read, and it covers more than that. It covers quite a bit. But if you read through that, then what I'm talking to you today on some of the property tax changes will make a lot more sense. Okay, here are the bills passed that relate to education funding, that pie, and that passed. So Senate Bill 60, this is the only income tax one I'm going to cover. There were other income tax bills, but they were more technical. And honestly, I am not an expert on that front, and I won't, and I don't know all the minutia of that. But this is the big one on the rate. So this one reduces from the 4.5% for the individual income tax to the 4.45%. And then the estimated reductions in revenue, 120 million, 123 and 27, and 100 million, 28. So this graph here shows you from 2016 what the individual income tax rate was, and then the funding associated with that rate. So even though the rate has gone down, the funding has gone up. I will point out here, because of the pandemic and federal changes, about $700 million that were related to 2020 got shifted into 2021. So this looks artificially high and this looks artificially low. But we did see significant growth at post-pandemic. And then our income taxes has been relatively flat, even though the rate has been going down. And that's because of growth in the economy. Questions on income taxes?
They keep lowering income tax rate to try to force function into property taxes to help with some of the structural imbalance. Phil?
There's been a lot of conversation about, what is the proper share of property taxes versus income taxes, and I can go into, that pie chart that I showed you was part of a presentation from October that with the background information on property taxes. And in my presentation in November, I had a slide about pros and cons of different taxes. So like the pro of income taxes is it's very, very, property taxes is very stable, right? The con is that everybody hates it and it's very transparent and everybody gets angry when property taxes go up, rightfully so.
It's more regressive.
And income taxes, it can be more regressive. Sales taxes are the most regressive.
Right.
So I think there's a lot going on here that's not just the balancing. I think
You say regressive, the most regressive.
Yes.
Define, help me understand that.
Let me go here. Oh, actually, that's a different presentation. I won't go look for it. By progressive and regressive in tax policy, we what that means is basically a measure of your ability to pay income strata as a percent. So a percentage. So sales taxes as a percentage of your total income. Those at the bottom, like 25. The bottom quartile pay a much higher percentage than those at the top quartile.
Okay.
Property sales, but income taxes are pretty much uniform because it's a uniform rate, right? If you make $20,000 or $2 million, you still pay 5%, right? But if you make $30,000 versus $2 million and you spend $25,000 on that gets sales taxed, you're paying a lot more of your percentage of your income.
So by saying that sales tax is the most regressive, it hurts low income people the most.
Correct.
Property taxes next.
Income taxes can be made more progressive, meaning that you have rates that go up. The drawback about doing that is that income taxes are already the most volatile source. And the more progressive you make it, the more volatile. If you ever want to sit down, I can talk to you about 2009. I interned with the state of California with essentially their GOPB, and there was a $26 billion deficit from a $100 billion budget. They lost a quarter of their revenues because California has a very progressive income tax, and in good years, the money flows in, but in bad years, the money it goes down dramatically. And I quickly learned I was frustrated with the state that policymakers there weren't willing to face reality. At some point, you either have to cut or raise taxes. Or something in between. But for 3 days, their version of EAC, basically, they looked at the governor's budget. That was Governor Schwarzenegger at the time. He wanted to address it through cuts. We had people come in, and basically I could summarize what those 3 days were. If you cut this, people will die. If you cut that, people will die. And there were very few actual suggestions that were helpful. And they kicked the can down the road and kicked the can down the road through these accounting gimmicks. And I quickly learned, I grew up in California. It's a beautiful state. I love it. I knew I didn't want to work for the state of California.
Right.
So, yes. So when we talk about regressive versus progressive, in general, income taxes can be the most progressive. Sales taxes are the most regressive. Property taxes are in the middle.
Yeah, this may be, this may be out of line. If it's out of line, just say you're out of line, Cole. But have you seen any appetite at all for a lottery in Utah?
Yeah, they've tried to, well, sorry, I'm not table.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. Yeah.
Tried to pass a bill a couple times and it has been met with ample hard nose and a lot of hostility.
I would say that that's probably even more so regressive.
That is
sales tax.
That is, yeah, in effect, it's a very regressive tax.
I mean, because, I would be against the lottery, just for the record, against a lottery myself, because it's a tax on poor people, right? The rich guy doesn't need to buy lottery tickets. He's already rich. He's already won the lottery.
The argument for a lottery, just to be fair, is that you can choose to participate in the lottery or not. At some point, you need to eat, right?
Correct.
And I actually when I worked for the state of Arizona, the lottery was one of my agencies there.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw the pros and cons up close about the lottery.
Be a fun discussion to have.
I don't know if I were in the legislature how I would vote for a lottery. Because I don't know. I'd have to think about that and we can talk about that another day. Okay. Let's move on to property tax bills. Okay. So House Bill 300, we talked about how in the 25 session, they made lots of changes to the voted and board local levy guarantee program. That's that state equalization program. They made a minor adjustment in House Bill 300. So if it rings a bell here, the voted and board local levy program, that's what's trying to equalize those local levy revenues from the voted and the board levy rate, right? So you have Park City on the left-hand side, that from one increment, they generate a lot of revenue, right? And you've got Paiute, Tintic, and San Juan on the other side, where that same increment generates very, very little. The state makes up the difference up to a certain level, right? So there's $300 million in this program, and that freeze of the basic rate to help pay for that, because it reduced costs of the basic program, that was to fund these dark orange bars primarily here, right there. But yeah, this was that formula that we talked about in the fall, that if you change it, you change behavior pretty dramatically for districts. So this shows you the increments guaranteed this year. You can see this is the line, you only get 20 guaranteed. You can see that a minority of districts are below that. And most of those districts are those that don't participate in the program because their property tax values are too high. So you can see at the who has the lowest rate on the voting board: North Summit, Rich, Daggett, Washington. You can see Park City is over here just below 20. But you also have some that do participate in the program. So Cache and Weber. So they are districts who are quote unquote leaving some money on the table by not choosing to levy the full amount. And then you get credit for your rate. So let's look at Cache for a certain amount of time. So the old formula basically said, after the change in the certified tax rate, we'll hold that harmless for 5 years. So the old rate here, you could see cash basically gets credit for 27 increments because the rate has been going down significantly. They also moved some out. This is not just all certified tax rate stuff. So they would be getting the full 20 increments under the old formula. The new formula, they only get those 2 years, so you get that 1573. Under House Bill 300 now, it goes back a year, essentially. So it's these 3 years. And so that's why when I modeled this out, there is a redistribution of that funding estimated that cash would get some more money from the program and these other districts would get less. But you can see the changes are relatively modest. This is not the big changes that like last year. Those were much, much bigger. So that's the only like a one minor change of the voted and board local levy program.
That's not, there's no, go back to that slide.
Which one?
That one, yeah. No. That's right.
I apologize.
The one that's had the dollar amounts on it.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So that.
So my estimates before were that cash, all else being equal, would be getting 18.1 million from the state guarantee. Now with this change, they're going to be getting $18.6 million, but it's a fixed pot of money. So other districts would be getting slightly less. So that was the policy choice there. Okay, House Bill 236. I think this is probably the most impactful of the property tax bills this year. So this one, it really is trying to amend the truth in taxation process, concerns about that. So it requires taxing entities like school districts to make 2 separate statements in public meetings regarding the consideration of a tax rate increase. And I'll go through the calendar so you can see this, how this would play out. Prepare an adopted interim budget that includes a schedule of that property tax increase, and then set in a restricted reserve account, essentially that amount. So here's the calendar for truth in taxation and property taxes in general. And what you'll see is that it's pretty compressed. Districts, they receive their assessed values from the tax commission. What I was showing you with assessed valuation, those are projections, estimates. The tax commission still works on estimates, but they have better projections. They have a whole team of economists. They have to provide that by the 22nd. Districts have to adopt their tentative budgets by June 1st. They don't get their certified tax rates until June 8th. And they have to set their tax rates. Well, sorry, the state level tax rates that we're talking about, the basic levy and the charter levy, those get set by June 22nd. And then districts have to adopt their budgets on or before June 30th. Okay. Then so this is the current process before House Bill 236. So if you adopted a budget that included a property tax increase, that's when the county would send out the notice about these property tax increases. They have to hold a T&T hearing. The earliest they can do that is August 1st, and then they have to adopt a final budget before September 1st. So it's the month of August so that's why all of that stuff happening with T&T was happening in August.
Right.
So now with that tentative budget, they basically have to make it much clearer, that they will be seeking a property tax increase in a separate budget meeting before June 13. They have to provide these data points: the approximate dollar of the increase, the percentage increase, and that they will be going through truth in taxation. There will be a public hearing process.
I'm just curious. There was a lot of criticism that these August 1st truth in taxation meetings, you'd basically already made the decision. Right. And so this changes that so that we're going back a little bit more so that it's not finalized necessarily. Right.
Correct. Okay. And that's why they have you have to set these dollars aside. I would at least argue, because then if if the property tax does not materialize, they choose to reduce their proposed rate. So like, let's say we're going to increase property taxes by $10 million, and they above the certified tax rate. That's that whole prior year plus the new construction. So 10 million above that. Let's say that they get a bunch of feedback and the LEA chooses not $10 million, we'll do $2 million, right? Then that $2 million would go through then that $8 million, hypothetically, the idea being you can't say it's already been spent. You know, those $8 million would go to other things, but their revenues that year would be lower.
It's really hard to plan. And they're also doing a lot based on guessing because they don't get their information from the county. So they have to make these proposals based on hypotheticals.
Well, and that's the challenge with all of this. And Representative Peterson, you know, who worked closely with LEAs to make this work, it's still a compressed schedule and it's challenging, you know. So districts are trying, they have all of these unknowns and they're trying to manage all of that and be able to know, okay, are we going to have enough to pay our teachers at the rates that we've already negotiated and all of those kind of things. So we'll see how this plays out. My hope is that at least folks will be, you know, they won't feel so that it's like all of a sudden, oh, you have to go down to the hearing tomorrow and it's already been done. Hopefully this will be a little more transparent. There'll probably be some bumps in the road, you know, as we figure out this process, but that's House Bill 236. Questions? Okay, let me go through the others because these are a little more technical, but they are important. Senate Bill 238, this has to do with the residential exemption. You know, if you have just to keep, you know, if you have $1 million house and it's your primary residence, you pay on a value, you get a 45% discount on that. So your value your taxable value would be $550,000, right? One of the findings from that OLEG audit were concerns about folks claiming multiple primary residences. And so this is essentially a way to try to address that. So because if some folks are claiming multiple primary residences, that means other people are paying higher property taxes than they otherwise would, if that makes sense. So what this says is, you know, a county has to that when if there was a property that was ineligible from the residential exemption in the prior year, or if you have an ownership change, or the county has reason to believe that they no longer qualify, you have to sign some sort of affidavit form that this is your primary, you know, residence. So you have to, rather than it just happening automatically. So they talked about in the OLEG audit that Kane County, which has a lot of secondary homes and these sort of things, you have to, they do, in their opinion, a really good job of making sure, you know, is this actually your primary residence or is this a secondary home? And they were saying, you know, maybe you should follow the Kane County model, other districts. If you're Davis County and the vast majority of your properties are primary residences, it kind of makes sense that they have this kind of automatic process right now. So it will be an administrative burden on the counties, but but this hopefully will also increase the valuations because some of those deductions that were inappropriate will go away, if that makes sense. So that was the idea. You know, everybody should get one primary residence. There's a lot of nuance in there and other stuff, but it also has some truth in taxation stuff in there. So once a district goes through the truth in taxation process, they have to provide the tax commission evidence of compliance with the process. You know, they've followed everything. So, because, you know, there was some issue about, you know, compliance last year and whether they actually followed it or not. So this is trying to, you know, clean that up a little bit too. Questions?
On the primary residence, it's always been illegal to claim more than one primary residence, right?
Correct.
They're just putting more teeth into the.
It's just been difficult when you have counties all administering different proper systems to know that, if you have a house in another county and that they're claiming the primary residence on that too. That goes to this other issue. Well, I'll go there. There's another bill to talk about more of a statewide property tax system. Okay. I'm not going to get into RDAs, redevelopment agencies, but this is a big, I've essentially, think of a redevelopment agency like, you see those dealerships where it says, we'll pay your property taxes or your sales taxes. It's not that they don't pay sales tax on that, right? But the dealership is paying that. So they're taking a slightly lower profit margin with the hope that they sell more cars, right? Similarly, a redevelopment agency, entities forego property taxes or other taxes for a certain amount of time with the idea of using those dollars to develop certain areas. This had to do with dormancy period because some of these tended to last a long, long time. After they finish their project, and what do you do with those unexpended funds? I can go into more detail on that.
Have they done audits on if that's coming to fruition? So, like you say, if a dealership's going to pay the sales tax,
right,
that dealership's going to look, okay, by doing that, did we increase the number of cars that we sold, right?
Right.
Okay, so RDAs, have we done some type of an audit where we can look at that and say, okay, we're allowing these areas to be developed, and we're losing this, but this is what we gain.
That's the theory. I will have to go back and look and see what audits have been done. I'm sure there have been audits here and there. The problem is that it's not, there's an alphabet soup of RDA.
Right.
And they're layered on top of each other. And so I don't even know all the RDAs out there.
Right.
And so that goes to this next piece. Senate Bill 206 is trying to create the statewide tax administration technology solutions program, trying specifically to get at this issue to provide greater oversights and updates on how these tax increment financing mechanisms are handled. So Vice Chair Kelly, I'd have to look into that with you. I have concerns about RDAs on the funding formula side because there are times where a district will forego revenues, but then the RDA that's getting, they will actually share some of that funding back to the district, and that doesn't apply to our formulas. But I have no way to know that the funding is going back to them in a portion. There's like often a 25-75 split.
When it's going back, is that where, say, Alpine School District, it's going back into the Alpine Foundation, and that's why it's not
sometimes it depends on the project, and I don't want to speak out of turn here because this is where my level of knowledge starts to tap out. But we can, yes, we sometimes there are examples where it goes right back to the school district. So they forego revenues, but then they get a portion of that back. And so we see the foregone revenues. And so we put in the formulas that you're saying the lower revenues, so they get more state aid, but then they get some of that funding back. Salt Lake School District is the one that's the biggest example of this. And I don't want to throw them under the bus because the biggest offenders of this are not pushed by Salt Lake School District or even the city or the county. They're pushed by the state, things like the inland port and others. And I'm not trying to opine whether that's good or bad. And so, but I would love to have a better idea. I see the numbers, but I have no idea about how much of that is actually going back to districts versus not, and there's a lot of times districts they're like, hey, you have a vote on this, but it's 1 vote out of 15. And they're basically, it's forced through, it's forced on school districts quite often.
Right.
So
Because all these entities get to choose if it happens or not, not just the school district.
Right, and that goes back to that three-legged stool. Certain other entities, counties, cities that rely much more on sales taxes, they're like, hey, we'll be fine foregoing that small piece of property tax.
Right.
Never mind that the district gets hosed, right? Because they're going to have all the sales tax over there. So this is definitely, this is a complicated and difficult area with very strong feelings on many, many different sides. I'll say that. I hope that this bill will help us to get a better handle of it. And I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around all the tax increment stuff. If you think school finance is complicated, go to that.
Yeah, trust me, I've been trying to get my head around it and really who's that's a question for another day. I'm just curious, like who's pushing the RDA idea? I know you're saying our legislature.
At times it's the legislature, at times, well, on the governmental entity side, at times, most often it's the legislature or a city or a county, but developers are pushing it. It's and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. Again, nobody likes taxes. If you can get out of taxes, you'll try to find a way. And if I could find a way to get out of my property taxes, I would hope that my better angels would prevail. But I don't know. If nobody knew and I could get $3,000 back, I would do it. But that's the challenge. I do. So that was Senate Bill 206. Those were the major bills that passed. Here are some bills that didn't pass, but were kind of high level conversations that I want you to be aware of. House Bill 161 and HJR 7 are related. This would have increased if the constitutional amendment got approved, moving from that 45% residential exemption to 60%. And basically what it would produce is a shift from residential to commercial and centrally assessed properties. The argument for that is that shift has happened as residential values have gone way up. That's a whole nother issue. Go if you're interested in that, go look at that OLEG audit. Okay. House Bill 449 and HJR 20 are related. These were bills to significantly reduce taxing entities' abilities to raise property taxes. I can go through a lot of those. These did not pass. The basic thrust of this is, right now you have to go through truth in taxation, which is a set of hearings and notices, but you don't have to go out to the voters for many of these property tax increases. Some of them you do initially. This would require going out to the voters for pretty much any increase in property taxes. Senate Bill 65, this was that bill that's that revised version of Senate Bill 37, which would have moved that basic tax. Remember how I just showed you how the basic tax rate gets offset from the WPUs? This would have sent that money to the state and then we send it right back. The cynical person might call it, the money laundering bill. And I still don't quite understand what it was trying to do, but that bill did not pass. Senate Bill 97, this was a bill to significantly change how that new growth is calculated. And that also did not pass. So those were the major bills this time. Hopefully give you a sense of the conversations. Taxes are complicated and there are many, many different vested interests. And we are a really important recipient of taxpayer dollars. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of places where we interact with that.
Yeah.
And in those places that we do, we don't have discretion over that. It's more perfunctory, here's your formula, do it. So hopefully give you an idea. I don't know what you as a board want to do. Be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I think the question that we need to figure out is, do we need to request, this is an information item today, but do we need to request an action item to adjust or change or cancel? We were going to do a lot of this in a working group. And we suggested that from a committee perspective, and the full board supported that. But a huge arm of that was the truth and taxation process. And I talked to Karen Peterson at length at the beginning of the session and said, look, we don't want to duplicate what you're doing. We don't want to, do double. And Representative Peterson said that they were going to focus on that piece. But then there were other bills where extensive conversations were had to look at the rates and the rate question, which was part of our question. And then Member August had added a PTIF portion into that question as well. But I think that some of that was discussed here in the legislature as well. So I don't know, personally, I don't know that we should move forward in a whole nother working group to do what they just did, especially understanding what the will of the legislature is right now. Having just come off the session, and they did so much work in this space. But what do you think? And do we request an action item to have this discussion? Hopefully we have Chair Hymas and Member Bogus all, with us although Member Bogus is online with us.
Chair, may I just add one thing? We haven't done much work on the property tax working group, not out of lack of desire. I love working on property taxes, but again, we're a small team, and we've been working to do the mid-year updates and then getting into session, and now we're in legislative estimates. Our life gets easier come May. And then through the summer, we would have more capacity. But until we get through the legislative estimates and what we call the final estimates, that's when we true up on the property taxes. My team we're really swamped. So it was just capacity issues why we haven't been able to move forward on that. We'd like to.
It's perfect time for me. No, I prefer that actually.
How do other states in our region, I mean, where are they? Where do they fall in this whole realm of income tax, property tax, voter levies? I mean, what's happening in Arizona? What's happening in Idaho? What's happening in?
Can I show you here?
Tax for the most part.
So this was one of the presentations. This came from LR Office of Legislative Research and General Counsel. This may not answer all your questions, but it may get to some part of it. So they presented to the committee. This is kind of a standardized view of property taxes paid as a percentage of home values. And Utah is really near the bottom of that. We have very low property taxes. You can see like Mississippi's at the bottom at 0.34%. We're at 0.5%. And you compare that to 2%, which is 4 times as much in New York.
There's only 2 states in the nation that pay less per home value than Utah, according to this.
It's close to it. Yeah. Yeah. I know but there's another good measure here. And this is how, if you go look at the slides, this is how it looks per county. You can see there's a lot of variation between the counties.
In the state.
Yeah. But it's not just your home value, right? If you're on a fixed income and yet you still have a home that has tripled in value, property taxes hurt, right? Another measure would be, and this is the way you look at it, as taxes paid as a percentage of median income. So this is the same way to look, and I think this is a fair way to look at it overall. We're still below average, but we go from like 48th or 47th to like in the mid 30s.
This is where, like, you mentioned Arizona has a lottery, Idaho has a lottery. It's not considered a tax, but it's a lot of money that goes to fund
for sure.
Those.
Can I give you an example? Texas, right? Texas has a 2-legged stool, right? Is it income taxes or sales tax? They don't have an income tax, but you can see on a proportional basis, property taxes are about 50% higher, relative to their income in Texas. So that's the thing. They've chosen to have a two-legged stool and higher property taxes. So you're absolutely right that this negates a lot of those kind of things, but a lot of these variations are about individual states having a different mix of taxes. At some point, you have to fund the government, right? And how it gets funded, are you going to tax, consumption with a sales tax? Are you going to tax work?
I mean, Nevada has a gaming tax, right?
Yeah.
And their gaming tax funds.
And that's one reason why
They're
they're a lot lower on that. Because if you have all this casino money coming in, you can have a lower tax rate. Not saying we should have,
I'm saying the same thing about a lottery, right? It's not
Las Vegas Strip.
Yeah.
So does that kind of get, Board Member Booth, I interrupted. Does that kind of give you at least a sense
That does.
of where we stand, at least on the property tax rate side relative to other states?
I just wish there were a way to fund public education that wasn't, we're perpetually in a state of panic or not, no, I just wish we could, in a measured, intentional way, be able to plan, project, make adjustments to meaningful priorities. But it just seems, so if we look at August, when everybody's trying to, have their public meetings and get everything settled. And if you throw on top of just the intensity of what our local leaders are doing and what you guys are trying to do, then you throw into it all of our neighbors who show up at the Truth and Taxation and show up in the board meetings, and they are just not happy. And so it's just so many things coming together. Isn't there a way, probably in a utopian world, so we just got to wait for the second coming. But for right now, isn't there a way to be just a little bit more, I don't know. I don't even know how to articulate what I'm trying to say. It's just that, wow, I can't believe you guys have survived.
So Board Member Booth, I'm not going to sell this as utopia, but I'm going to make another plug for this OLAG audit. In the audit, they do acknowledge that in the current truth and taxation process, yes, you are accounting for new growth, but you don't account for inflation. There's no inflationary mechanism. There are other states that do that because, and OLAG does recommend that policymakers consider some sort of inflationary aspect to truth and taxation. The benefit of that would be that right now you have to go through truth and taxation for an inflationary adjustment, or you go through it for a new program. Those are very different requests, right? And the con of that kind of, do you really want to automate property tax increases? People would probably say no. So that's, again, there's no utopia here. There are trade-offs. But that is one of the solutions that, I'm not saying it would solve all problems, but it would certainly reduce the heat. Because if districts knew they had an inflationary adjustment on their certified tax rate, they wouldn't be going through truth and taxation nearly as often. They would just be going for a new project. We want to do X, Y, and Z. We want to add this. But yeah, that was noticeably absent in the bills.
Wow, that would help.
I think it's because nobody wants to be the face of property tax increases.
But they already kind of are in a somewhat sense. Can I just move to online? Todd Haber, Business Administrator Haber, are you online still with us?
I am.
Could you share, my one machine just died, but I think you had a comment in the chat. Could you make your comments here for us?
Sure. Yeah, you had asked the question about the working group and whether the working group should still be constituted and work forward. My comment in the chat was basically we have two pieces of legislation that have gone through that change several aspects of the truth and taxation process, both on the noticing side and on setting up a reserve so that there's no message that it's a foregone conclusion that the tax is going to be increased. I would suggest that that work group wait until we get through this truth and taxation cycle to see what worked and didn't work in the bills, so that we can have a better conversation for the next legislative session.
That's not a bad idea.
That be after June then?
It would be, so the truth and taxation
September.
hearings themselves won't take place until August, so we're talking
But
probably September.
But their budgets are gonna be set in June, right? So you'd kind of know in June.
So
Well, they know
under
that
House
they-
Bill 236, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Under House Bill 236, we have to adopt what's called an interim budget, which is the full budget that includes a reserve set aside for the dollar amount that the tax increase contemplates. So yes, we will have a budget in place. No, we can't access the money until after the truth and taxation hearing happens. And that either supports accessing the money or does not support accessing the money.
And you won't know the impacts of the new bill until after the August hearings, right?
Well, we won't know the effectiveness of one. Does the public agree that having a budget reserve set aside alleviate the concern that it's a foregone conclusion that the taxes are going to increase? So that's kind of like a customer satisfaction survey. The other is we have additional notices on the front side. So even before budgets are adopted, we have to have communications and conversations in the month of May that we've not had before. And again, we want to find out, was that even helpful? Is that mode of communication and conversation with the public helpful in the process?
I thank you.
Todd, would it be fair to say that we won't really know how it played out until the fall?
My guess is we won't know until September, or at least until the first taxing entities start holding their truth and taxation hearings and people complain about elements that should have been corrected by the two bills that appear not to be corrected.
If so. So then what do we need to do anything administratively do we need to talk about that as a committee, or do we want to just reassess in September when we see how the new changes work or don't work, or do we need to do anything procedurally if we do? That's from members.
Ma'am, if I may,
Yeah.
so I would recommend that perhaps we come back to this in your October Finance Committee meeting and then make that decision on to, so then.
But if,
September.
well, I would.
Or
September, yeah,
Okay,
because
okay.
if you do October, now you're getting.
Yeah.
Too close to the
Yeah,
Okay.
enough time to pull it
Yeah,
together.
because we meet early in September, so
Yeah, so Vice
Yeah,
Chair
it's-
Kelly, may I? The challenge with September is we would be putting board backups during the hearing process.
No, but just the forming of the committees, not necessarily that we're making those decisions and that.
You need to
but-
still
but-
have it.
But putting it together.
The conversation.
So for the September meeting or even the August meeting, we would be able to pull together those tentative budgets and say, here are all the proposed property tax increases. So the benefit would be we would have greater transparency on that and could show you ahead of time, because we don't really know that until budgets get adopted into July. And then honestly, it's hard for us to really suss that out unless we do a lot of work until the counties do their notifications, which is late July. So we would know that a little bit earlier. We can say this is where this is the number of districts that are looking for property tax increases, and this is the extent of the increase. But to Todd's point, whether that actually changes the heat in the TNT meetings, we won't know that until August. And then we could tell you anecdotally in the meeting, it would be hard to have a lot of backups ready by the September meeting. By October, we would have that.
So I don't know if I can even make a motion because this is an information item. But we could request that we have, maybe I just say to the board, this is gonna be addressed in September.
Right.
Like you voted on to have us move forward.
So Madam Chair, I mean, this is a good like point of order or information. I didn't think you needed an action item just to tell staff to forward plan on an agenda, so you need an action item to tell us what to do?
No,
Okay.
no, but because the full board voted to have this working group.
Oh, right. Okay.
And convene with the specific roles and things like that. I'm trying to figure out procedurally if we as a committee need to do anything at all, or if just in the information item report out to the board, I can say, because of some changes in the legislative session, this is going to be revisited in September. Is that fine on an information item? If the board says no,
Line in the official board. Motion.
no, there wasn't a timeline, but I just don't know if the board's expectations, I'm just trying to manage expectations.
So Chair, if I may, it might be helpful because we have some time, simply have an item in the April meeting to say, what was the motion? What was the board motion? What has been resolved versus not?
Oh,
To at least have
meeting.
it, in finance committee, just assess, basically, has the legislature already done some of this? And at least have an action item that you could act on next month. That way, at least you have some time to think about that, other board members, because I don't, but that was just a thought, because I'd have to go back and look at the specifics of everything now that the session's done to even be able to assess, oh, okay, 80% of what it looks like some of the concerns were on truth and taxation were addressed, but we won't know that until the fall, but these other things were not. I couldn't tell you right now. I'd have to go back and look at the motion in more detail.
Can request as a committee, because that's just a staff bringing back that information. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw the motion out on the floor without well, maybe I'll just say that I would move that we discuss this again as an action item in April, looking at the original motion language from the full board and what has been done in the legislature. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. That passes unanimously with member Hymas absent. Member Bogus, can you hear us still? I think she's got to. So member Hymas and member
Yes, I can
Bogus.
hear you.
Oh, you can. Okay. Are you a yes on discussing this in April?
Yes.
Yes.
And Chair Hymas is as well. Thank you all. And Todd Hubbard, Dale, when we were talking yesterday, we had a question for Todd. I can't remember what it was. Do you remember we said that would be a better question for Todd Hubbard?
Chair, I believe the question had to do with board member Bogus's portion of that motion.
Oh, it did.
On what transparency is required and or available from the PTIFs, the Public Treasury Investment Funds now, and some of these other items. I'd have to go back and look at the specifics in the motion.
Business Administrator Hubbard. I don't know if we're getting close to noon, but for next time, would you be willing to share some of that with us too?
Sure, yeah, just if you can put it in writing so I know explicitly what I'm trying to respond to, I'll be glad
All
to.
right. We will. Maybe I'll ask you when you read that motion language, Dale, will you send him a email or a text just about what her motion language was so we can get that information? That sounds great. Any other questions or concerns for today's meeting? That was a luxury conversation.
Yeah, it was.
We don't get
Yeah,
time
it was.
for
That was nice.
It was really nice. Thanks to everybody who participated. And we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Dale. That's
Taken, I took
I
screenshots
should
of those
get
two
credit
slides
for
about the
this.
taxes.
I
Paid as a percent of.
If I were getting an advanced degree, I would.
Utah's overall.
There's a quiz.
I
There's a quiz at the
feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there about that.